In understanding the rise of fascism and its cyclical nature in modern society, we can observe that authoritarian regimes emerge as a response to crises in capitalist systems. Historically, societies facing acute systemic contradictions, whether economic inequality, political disenfranchisement, or alienation, have often failed to address the root causes of these issues. Instead, they repress them, channeling collective frustrations into authoritarian and exclusionary ideologies. This cycle is deeply tied to the interplay between what George Bataille identifies as the heterogeneous and homogeneous forces within a society. Heterogeneity represents the disruptive, sacred, and libidinal energy of social discontent, a force that resists assimilation into the order of production and hierarchy. It manifests in moments of revolutionary potential or collective unrest, challenging the established system. Fascism, however, co-opts this energy, redirecting it toward homogeneous ends, reinforcing hierarchical control, mythic nationalism, and scapegoating. This weaponization provides a temporary catharsis for social tensions, creating the illusion of agency and change, even as it reinstates an authoritarian version of the same exploitative structures. The result is not transformation, but a cyclical return to a slightly reconfigured status quo. One could argue that this cycle stems from the failure to imagine alternatives. Mark Fisher's concept of capitalist realism points to how deeply entrenched capitalist logic has become in the social psyche. We struggle to envision systems that transcend the frameworks of production, consumption, and hierarchy. Even Marxist-Leninist regimes, ostensibly positioned as revolutionary alternatives, often reproduce the same authoritarian structures they seek to dismantle. These regimes frequently transform revolutionary energy into tools for state control, co-opting the rhetoric of liberation while perpetuating exploitation and alienation. Herbert Marcuse's notion of repressive desublimation aptly describes this phenomenon, where even subversive impulses are reabsorbed into the dominant system, defanging their revolutionary potential. Fascism, then, serves a dual purpose in capitalist societies. It provides an outlet for the frustrations born of systemic contradictions, while ensuring that the underlying structures remain intact. In this sense, it functions as a kind of social exorcism, releasing libidinal energy to prevent deeper transformations. The resurgence of far-right ideologies today reflects this dynamic as societies face mounting economic precarity, environmental crises, and political alienation. Instead of addressing these crises at their roots, the system channels discontent into exclusionary nationalism, scapegoating, and authoritarian control. This raises the question of whether the heterogeneous energy of social discontent can ever escape co-optation. A break from this cycle would require not only addressing systemic contradictions, but also fostering a vision that transcends the logic of production and hierarchy altogether. It demands a reimagining of global solidarity, where grievances are not isolated within national boundaries, but understood as part of a planetary struggle against exploitation and disenfranchisement. What is perhaps most insidious about this cycle is how it shapes our perceptions of freedom and democracy. In liberal democracies, the authoritarianism of regimes like China and Russia is often used as a foil, a way to reinforce the illusion that we are better off. This comparison diverts attention from the failures within neoliberal democracies themselves, from growing economic inequality to the erosion of political agency. Meanwhile, authoritarian regimes like China point to the West's failure to meet the basic needs of its citizens, contrasting their model of state control as a more effective means of managing productive forces. This mutual reinforcement ensures that neither system fully confronts its contradictions, each using the other's flaws to justify its own legitimacy. While both states, as all other in the modern age, only exist to harness their productive forces through exploitation of their own people. The Hegelian notion of sublation, where contradictions are sublated into a higher synthesis, might offer a lens through which to understand this dynamic. In a way, both the United States and China have integrated elements of each other's systems. China has fully embraced capitalism within its Marxist-Leninist framework, demonstrating that productive forces can be maximized without democracy. Conversely, the U.S. has integrated aspects of socialism even if imperfectly, through social welfare programs that attempt to mitigate the failures of unfettered capitalism. Yet these integrations remain incomplete, each system resisting a full synthesis. In the US, this resistance manifests as a turn away from further integration, particularly under the pressures of neoliberalism. The weakening of the social contract and the rise of far-right movements suggest that the country must undergo yet another cycle of repetition, a rise and fall of reactionary forces, before the populace might embrace more systemic change. This repetition mirrors the psychoanalytic concept of the return of the repressed, where unresolved contradictions resurface until they are fully addressed. This cycle is not inevitable, but escaping it requires us to move beyond the illusion of choice between authoritarian state capitalism and neoliberal democracy. It necessitates imagining new forms of solidarity and governance that prioritize human needs over production, competition, and hierarchy, that fully integrate heterogeneous and vulnerable populations, such as people with disabilities and neurodivergence. Without this vision, we remain trapped in a cycle of repression and recurrence, oscillating between systems that fail to resolve the contradictions of our age. Your likes and comments make a huge difference. They help the channel grow and reach more people who are passionate about these topics. Every interaction not only supports the content, but also brings me closer to the dream of doing this full time and creating even more in-depth, high-quality videos for you. Thanks so much for being part of this journey.